Our opening words today are taken from a letter addressed to the UU Fellowship of Central Oregon by their minister, the Reverend Scott Rudolph. The letter was written the day after the breach and vandalism of the Capitol. Yesterday, we witnessed white supremacist terrorists and rioters lay siege to the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to overturn the results of our country's free and fair election. The profound restraint of the authorities during the Capitol takeover, incited by the outgoing president, would have been shocking at even the most peaceful of protests for Black or immigrant lives in our national capital. That incredible disparity in treatment has one obvious reason. The mob was overwhelmingly white, and this difference is inextricably bound up with white supremacy. The events call upon us to continue doing the work of dismantling white supremacy. If you are angry, heartbroken, and in disbelief, so am I. If you feel a renewed strength to commit to this work, use it. This is what is needed. This is how our country has changed over the years and how it will continue to fulfill its promise. Right now, this is America. There can be no denial that Americans did this while other Americans detested it. But this is our America. I maintain deep faith. Our democratic institutions were greatly tested but did prevail. While my anger towards politicians who enabled this yesterday and throughout the years remains, many politicians are striving for decency and justice. I do believe that the events expose the way corruption and greed threaten the soul of our nation. There will be introspection on conspiracy theories, lies, and hate groups. My greatest hope would be around reclaiming a shared understanding that truth is not simply a matter of choice. I pray for a return to civil discourse, compromise, and the common good when shown the results of their absence. I yearn for sincere attempts to heal the partisan divide. Yesterday should mark the death throes of fascism in our country, not its triumph. If I am wrong, and if more division comes from this in the coming weeks, I will not succumb to fear. The moral imagination of this nation far outperforms the actions of those who seek to undermine our democracy or values. I come back to my bedrock faith, which is in the resilience of the human spirit. This faith cannot be shaken. Whatever comes, I know with great certainty that we will find a way forward together that honors our humanity, embodies our values, and weaves us together in ever more beautiful ways as a community of care. My faith in you cannot be shaken. With love, Reverend Scott. Mary will light our chalice this morning. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to thank with deep gratitude of those who have lit the flame within us and the community. This morning, we're doing something a little different with our first hymn. Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout, one of the creators of the Beloved Conversations curriculum, will lead us in singing Gathered Here. Before we begin, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing as loud and as big as you want. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all join Dr. Rideout in singing the opening hymn, Gathered Here.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. 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 Spirit draw near.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us today. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation, inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU 7 principles. Today's service centers around the 6th principle. We affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. As naive or impossible as the 6th principle may seem, we should not give up on it. In the face of our culture's apathy and fear, we should imagine and help create a powerful vision of peace by peaceful means, liberty by liberatory means, justice by just means. We should believe and live as if we believe that a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all is possible. There is no guarantee that we will succeed, but we will improve ourselves and improve the world by trying. My name is Janet Cooper, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you are a guest and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your gold hand and unmute yourself when Andy calls your name.
I don't see any raised hands, Janet, so back to you. I guess
Okay.
we're all part of the family.
Okay, thank you, Andy. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all of our members and friends. This is a great way to keep up with the latest news in our community. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider becoming a member of our community. Please contact me or a board member if you are interested. Thank you. So good morning and welcome to everyone. Let us now recite the affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need further explanation, Please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your gold hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the reactions icon. When Andy calls your name, please unmute yourself, then speak.
Dolores, please unmute yourself and share your announcement.
Hello. This Wednesday is the first Operations Committee meeting at 6 o'clock on Zoom. So if anyone's interested in joining our group for 2021, please send me an email or give me a call and I'll get you a Zoom invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Shriva, please unmute yourself and share your announcement.
Morning all. So tomorrow at 5 p.m. we have our monthly board meeting. If you would like to attend, please either email me or Andy and we will send you that invite. Otherwise, my board members, I will see you tomorrow at 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Triva. Diane DeMarco, please unmute yourself and share your announcement.
Yeah, we have another women's group meeting. That will be our second one coming in February. That'll be the 1st of February at 2 o'clock. It'll go from 2 to 3:30. And just want to be real clear on how you get to come. All you need to do is find my email or phone number on the newsletter and let me know you want to come and I will mail you an invitation. So don't want to leave anybody out. If you'd like to come, let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Mary Ann Anderson, please unmute yourself and share.
Hi, folks. Just a reminder that we're going to be resuming the poetry spoken word workshops events Thursday at 7 o'clock. I think it's on the flyer, the e-blast. And if you haven't gotten a pre-invitation announcement, please contact me so that I can definitely put you on the list. Well, you're all welcome. Thank you. Thursday at 7.
Thursday at 7. Thank you, Mary Ann. Lou Patelka, please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Men's group meets tomorrow at 10 on Zoom. Andy sends out the invitation.
I will indeed. Thank you, Lou. And now I'll introduce myself for a couple of announcements. And I even have slides to accompany. These are Religious Education Committee announcements, RE announcements. The first one is I want to bring it to everyone's attention a wonderful website and app that's available called Waking Up by Sam Harris. You can see the website there, wakingup.com. It's free and it's a program of 30 days of 10-minute meditations that he guides you through. So for anyone who's interested in developing a meditation practice, I really recommend this particular website. It's very gentle and pleasant, and I'm on day 5, and I'm finding it really great. Secondly, on the 28th of January, the last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m., I'm going to host a discussion group about the UU 8th principle proposal. There is an 8th principle proposed by the UUA that has been adopted by many congregations, and it would be great for us to discuss it amongst ourselves. It addresses affirming and promoting spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. So that'll be Thursday the 28th at 7 p.m. And finally, this painting is my wife Mimi's most recent work. I shared it with friends as a moment of Zen. A lot of people found it comforting. And it occurred to me that we have a lot of great artists in our UUCC community. What I'm going to propose is that if you take pictures of your most recent work you'd like to share, and send it to me at my email, andrewfagan@mac.com. I'll put together a PowerPoint show of that art, and we can get online and have a gallery visit of our UUCC artists, visual artists. So please send that stuff to me. I'll put it together and announce a date when we can all get together for an art show, which will bring us joy in these challenging times. So that's it for me, and I believe that's it for announcements. Back to you, Janet.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Next week, Reverend Rod Richard will present When I Know I'm Right. Today, being the third Sunday of the month, we welcome a witness to our virtual pulpit. A moment of witness is widely practiced in Christian and Islamic denominations as a means to bear witness or give testimony about the way a specific religious affiliation has impacted one's life. Our hope is that in their moment of witness, a congregant here can briefly share a significant experience that moved them, helping all of us to deepen our relationship with Unitarian Universalism and strengthen our ties to the community. Treva Boyce, please unmute yourself and share with us this morning.
Good morning, all. My journey to Unitarian Universalism is different from most. Mom introduced me to Unitarian Universalism on one of my visits when I lived in Gilroy. She and some friends had been commuting into the slow UU, and together they made the decision to found the UUCC so Cambrians and San Simeons didn't have to do the 60-mile round trek trip every weekend. When I visited, I joined Mom at Sunday services when they were held at the Vets Hall, the old schoolhouse, and I think even once at Dolores's house down in Marine Terrace in the very beginning. Although I always felt welcome and accepted by whomever happened to be attending that day, that was not the reason I joined. In 2016, I had been divorced for 3 years and had started slipping in terms of my physical and mental health. Concerned for my well-being, Mom invited me to return to Cambria and move in with her. The conditions were simple. I needed to have a full-time job and join the UUCC. I did not see either of these as conditions, as for me, they were really givens. I enjoy my profession and still had just under 20 years before retirement. And as far as joining the church, I knew I would be attending with her anyway, as I enjoyed going in the past. However, paying dues and being present each Sunday did not make me a Unitarian Universalist. With encouragement and support from Mom, I turned my life around, finding a job I love, healing physically, losing 70 pounds, and mentally rediscovering and accepting who I am as an individual.
Stop.
I didn't really get Unitarian Universalism until 2 years ago at General Assembly with Mom. I'd GA before in Portland, but other than feeling accepted by complete strangers after shaving my head, I didn't get what it was about. GA in uncomfortably aware of the daily racial injustices that I had been blind to. During the Ware lecture, Brittany Picknett stood at the lectern addressing the issue of family separation and the treatment of children at the border, questioning the cry echoing throughout this country, "This is not who we are." Picknett occurred us claim this is exactly who we are and who we have been. The thematic topic of many lectures and workshops was white privilege, something I was extremely uncomfortable with and not willing to accept. The more I worked to swallow this impossible pill, the more obvious my white privilege became, and the more aware of the racial injustices that permeate everyday life in this country I became. I realized this people, Unitarian Universalists from across the nation, had not come together to feel good about themselves or their chosen religion. They had come together to do the hard work of making our society more just and egalitarian. This was a religion I could commit to, and people I could work alongside in the difficult days ahead. For me, this was my moment of becoming a Unitarian Universalist. Thank you.
Thank you, Treva, for sharing your special connection. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life, but please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles also embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken this morning. but are deeply felt in this community. Today's service makes use of material and content from the Beloved Conversations virtual program titled Meditations on Race and Ethnicity. The program is offered to all UU congregations by the Meadville Lombard Theological School. Diane DeMarco, Kat Lakish, Dolores Mier, and I signed up for the fall 2020 course. The course is taught in 3 phases, which are titled Within, Among, and Beyond. The first phase, Within, is taught in race-based groups that use different materials. The reason for separating white people from people of color is that each group has very different work to do. People of color will work separately on their healing, their visioning, and how they have internalized their experiences in white supremacist cultures. The white laypersons group is working on resilience, leaning into discomfort, power sharing, willingness to learn, and openness to change. Dolores and Diane will be sharing what material or concepts in the course has had the most impact on them. Diane, would you please unmute yourself and begin?
This reading was taken from an interview with Robin DiAngelo by Krista Tippett. DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, is one of the most widely read books in the world right now. Quote, silence functions to uphold racism. It's hard for white people to talk about racism because so many are invested in not seeing it. End quote. White people ask DiAngelo, what do I do? And she replies, how have you managed not to know the racism in this country? She explains that this speaks to how seductive the forces of comfort are. What will it take for us to be uncomfortable? Discomfort has a cost. Most white people are willing for other people to pay that cost. We would prefer to dangle hope in front of people of color and continue not to show up in the long term. One of the realities that has surfaced is that rewounding has taken place when white and blacks get together to discuss racism. It's stressful and uncomfortable for white people to hear generalizations about themselves. White people go into these dialogues and cause a lot of harm. Most white people live their lives in segregation. They will go cradle to grave with few to no authentic relationships with Black people and with no sense that anything of value is missing from their lives. They continue to measure the absence of Black people as the criteria of the value of their neighborhoods and of their schools. A racism worldview is embedded in everything. An anti-racist culture and practice doesn't exist yet, but it's time to create it so we don't pass this infection yet to another generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Those were powerful words. Let us join in a time of meditation, of prayer and of silence. Let us seek the quiet and the calm, laying aside our struggles. And in the silence, may there be a reverence in our hearts, a thankfulness within our spirit, and a deepening understanding of the meaning of our lives. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. Dolores, please unmute yourself and share with us what has most impacted you so far in this coursework.
I cried a lot during these learning experiences and discussions with my white pod group, which was Janet, Diane, and Kat and myself. The resources presented were in an effort to help white people see themselves and perhaps see BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, only if they really wanted to. So the first part that affected me was called Done Educating, that I was so taken by. It was an interview with a Black attorney and an author that expressed a point of view regarding white understanding of racism toward BIPOC that I was suddenly aware had been expressed many times before by other presenters, and I finally understood. She said, I am done trying to educate white people about the harm that has been done to Blacks and other people of color. It's been long enough. White people need to open up and educate themselves if they are really interested. She said, I wrote a book so I don't have to keep defending my people against the defensive posture that white people take when confronted with their own racism and white supremacy. The hurt is too damaging to us over and over, and it grabs energy away from working toward liberation. This is why the beloved conversation curriculum was prepared in two different sections, actually three, one for whites and one for people of color. To be in the same room with the oppressor and have to explain what equality means over and over again is not a growing, healing process for oppressed people. I've experienced the same, not understanding what equality is in the LGBT movement. Then there was an excerpt that I want to read. It's about intent versus impact. From Paula Deen to Alec Baldwin to your annoying, bigoted uncle or friend, we hear it over and over again. I never meant any harm. It was never my intent. I'm not a racist. I'm not a homophobe. I'm not a sexist. I cannot tell you how often I've seen people attempt to deflect criticism about their oppressive language or actions by making the conversation about their intent. At what point does intent conversations stop mattering so that we can step back and look at impact? After all, in the end, what does the intent of our action really matter if our actions have the impact of furthering the marginalization or oppression of those around us? In some ways, this is a simple lesson of relationships. If I say something that hurts my partner, it doesn't much matter whether I intended the statement to mean something else because my partner's hurting. I need to listen to how my language hurt my partner. I need to apologize. And then I need to reflect and empathize to the best of my ability so I don't do it again. But when we're dealing with the ways in which our identities intersect with those around us, and in turn, the ways our privileges and our experiences of marginalization and oppression intersect, this lesson becomes something much larger and more profound. This becomes a lesson of justice. What we need to realize is that when it comes to people's lives and identities, the impact of our actions can be profound and wide-reaching. And that's far more important than the question of our intent. We need to ask ourselves, what might be or might have been the impact of our actions or words? And we need to step back and listen when we're being told that the impact of our actions is out of step with our intents or our perceptions of self. There are so many realizations this curriculum is educating us on. I encourage you all to take the next class or sign into the free monthly class that Nancy Tolan is running for us called Moving Toward Racial Justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores. Very powerful words. Thank you both, Diane and Dolores, for sharing some highlights from the course we've just completed. The anthem today is Change by Tracy Chapman and will be sung by Mary Schwalbe.
If you knew that you would die today, saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that love can break your heart when you're down so low you cannot fall, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction will cause an effect? Makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change, makes you change. If you knew that you would be alone, knowing right, being wrong, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would find a truth that brings up pain that can't be soothed, would you change? Would you change? How bad, how good does it need to get? How many losses, how much regret? What chain reaction will cause an effect? Makes you turn around, makes you try to explain, makes you forgive and forget, makes you change, makes you change. Are you so upright you can't be bent when it comes to blows? Are you so sure you won't be crawling? If not for the good, why risk falling? Why risk falling? If everything you think you know makes your life unbearable, would you change? Would you change? If you'd broken every rule and vow, and hard times come to bring you down, would you change? Would you change? If you knew that you would die today, if you saw the face of God and love, would you change? Would you change? Would you change?
Thank you, Mary. That was beautiful. Today's sermon is titled The Courage to Be Wrong. It was originally presented by the Reverend Emily Hartlief at North Shore Unitarian Church, located in Vancouver, British Columbia, in September 2017. Emily served as co-minister at the North Shore Church from 2016 to 2018, and currently serves as the membership coordinator for the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. This sermon was included in our Beloved Conversations coursework as a source of inspiration for white participants to better understand and admit that we can and do harm others, and as encouragement to practice following the leadership of Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Here now is Reverend Emily Hartlief.
I want to begin with a story. It's from another minister that I know, Tina Simpson. We worked together for several years, and it's about her dog, Roscoe. Roscoe's a small dog, less than 10 pounds, but he has a big personality. Do you know any dogs like that? Yeah. So he's vivacious, and his favorite place to sit is right at the back screen door so he can see the whole yard and stay on alert for any potential threats. Grandchildren who could come bounding over the fence, cats, squirrels. And one afternoon, Tina heard Roscoe barking and barking and barking at the back screen door. And she couldn't see anything when she looked out. So she opened the door and let him go out, and he ran straight back to the edge of the yard and started circling and barking and circling and barking. And Tina went out thinking, what is this? Some dead animal or a forgotten toy? What was so disturbing to him? What had him all riled up? And when she arrived at the scene, she started to laugh. Roscoe was, in fact, barking at a pile of his own dog shit. And I wanted to begin with this story because I think it illuminates something true about humans as well as dogs. How often do we get all riled up and start barking and are certain as we dash out that it's somebody else's issue or problem or stuff? But when we arrive, when we are honest and when we actually see what's going on, it's our own stuff. In the recovery community, this insight is often boiled down to the phrase, if you spot it, you got it. And so it takes tremendous courage, tremendous humility to recognize that what we have been barking at might be our own. Before Marcus and I got married, I tried to be very prepared and diligent about marriage, and we went to a relationship workshop led by a psychologist, kind of a leader in his field, named David Schnark, and his wife, Ruth Morehouse, led the workshop together. And Schnark and Morehouse kind of a different, more unique approach. He's one of the first people in his field to combine kind of the wisdoms of family systems theory with marriage and sex counseling. So some of his work is a little controversial, and he's kind of known to having a more assertive stance than many in the counseling field. In the workshop, Schnark described how challenging it is to work with couples who refuse to acknowledge how mean they are to their partners at times. Schnark coined this term. It's called normal marital sadism. And he's not talking about the Marquis de Sade. He's just talking about that common occurrence that happens with almost every type of relationship, when it's committed, when you've been in it for years, when the friction is causing this subtle experience, and sometimes not so subtle, of how we defy, ignore, or reject the people we love the most. So it's more than even barking at their shit. It's when we push a little bit of our shit on their side of the bed. But Schnark says this is normal, that this is common. And so when a couple comes in and says, oh, that's not us, we have other problems, he says, I don't really work with people who deny the obvious, so you might want to find another counselor. He says people who refuse to acknowledge their own hatred, their own vindictiveness, are the most pernicious people to those they love. You cannot learn to control a hostile impulse that you don't acknowledge that you have. So the problem isn't that urge that we sometimes have to be mean, but the problem is if you deny it, you are more likely to act out and more likely to harm those you love. When I heard Schnark describe this, I felt relieved. Because I am sometimes prickly and unreliable and resentful and explosive and petty. And I need help from others to recognize when that is true, so that I can do the repair that is needed to experience the connection and relationship I want in the world. We all have a shadow side. No one is without meanness or cruelty, and certainly not any person you love. So we are destined by our common humanity to mess up and mess up life for the people we care about. Once, a man knocked on my door at the church office and asked if he could talk. He was one of those kind of pillar of the community types, heavily involved in the music program, teenage children in youth group. His wife was an active member. Many people looked to them with respect for their family. And in this story, this man, I'll call him Dave, that's just his name for this story. He confessed to me that he was struggling because he had developed a crush on another woman at church. It was not his wife. And he told me that it started with their shared interest in the music program, their collaboration on a project, and then there had been quite a few flirtatious emails. But Dave was worried. He didn't want to hurt his family. He didn't want to hurt his wife. He recognized his own behavior was off track, and he was scared. I didn't say much, but rarely have I seen such courage. In his troubled and teary face, I saw someone who was doing his very best. He needed someone to listen to him and witness him, but he didn't really need my advice. In talking through the situation, his own integrity became more and more clear to him. He chose a path of letting go of this flirtation connection with this other woman. He chose to forgive himself for getting into the situation and to move towards a new and different, but sustaining connection with his wife. Dave's story was a gift to me because I recognized how few places we have to share what might be called in traditional language a confession. Most of the time, we are, myself especially included, busy occupying spaces like social media, telling the world how we have it all together. And yet, we need places and relationships where it is possible to confess, where it is possible to say, I have wronged. The earth is a forgiveness school, writes Anne Lamont. You might as well start at the dinner table. That way you can do this work in comfortable pants. Last Sunday, I was able to wear some comfortable pants at the Walk for Reconciliation. I was there with thousands of others from the Lower Mainland and many Unitarians from this congregation and others in Vancouver. It was like today, sunny and crisp and clear, and in the air was a spirit of hopefulness. The streets were flooded with people, young and old, wearing shirts that read, "Every child matters." And people carried signs that said, "We stand with you," and a new way forward. This hopeful spirit, I believe, is possible because of the work that has been done by the Truth and Healing Reconciliation Commission, looking at the hard, difficult stories of Canada as a nation and seeing more clearly its errors and the legacy of these errors. Our history is your history, National Chief Perry Bellegrade of the First Nations Assembly told the gathered crowd. Our history is your history. It began long before 150 years ago. I closed my eyes in the midst of the crowd, and I thought of all of the errors, the violence, the trauma, all of the Indigenous people and communities who still today struggle in the grip of addiction and poverty and isolation. And when I opened my eyes, I saw a crowd full of courageous people. People who were not afraid to look at the shadows and the errors and were willing to embrace a painful past and move forward. It takes great courage for a nation to do so. The nation I come from has done nothing like this yet. And so I believe that we are still in the very beginning stages of understanding what reconciliation looks like at this scale. And I am so glad to be awake in this time of the world because I think so much is possible. The earth is a forgiveness school, and there is much for us to learn. As a member of the clergy at the Walk for Reconciliation, I was very aware of my presence was saying something as I was wearing a stole about religion or righteousness or God. And I was reminded of another pastor, a Unitarian Universalist I know, who tattooed on his arm the words, "You could be wrong." You could be wrong. And I wished I had that tattoo that day because I admire this boldness of human fallibility. In this church, in our Unitarian tradition, we hold fast to what we name as a theology of connection. It is connection that brings us back from the brinks of despair and hell. And it is different than a theology of we're always right. If you have a theology of we're always right, there's no room for humility or for acknowledging wrongs. But in a theology of connection or in a theology of you might be wrong, there is an awareness that repair is possible, that we can draw ourselves closer to the world and towards one another through our actions and through our humble courage. So this is what our tradition asks of us. To be in relationship with other imperfect humans is to have to come back over and over again to connection. Connection with ourselves and connection to the larger world. And so often we can't get there without letting a few things go. Have you seen the bumper sticker? It says, "Happiness is an inside job." I think that this is true about relationships and about forgiveness as well. We may think that our relationships are dependent on how other people treat us, or that forgiveness or reconciliation is someone else making amends towards us. But this is not true. You don't even have to talk to the person who wronged you to be in a process of forgiveness. It may have nothing to do with how they respond or even if you communicate with them about it. And to forgive is not to condone a behavior. It is to say, I am clear for myself I will no longer be the monk still carrying the woman. I will lay that weight down. It is a day in and day out process. It is love in action. I know that I have to forgive myself over and over again because I seem to be getting in the same messes over and over again. And any connection that is possible with others is only possible when I am clear within myself. George Herbert wrote, "He who cannot forgive others destroys a bridge over which he must pass." In my diligence around getting married, I asked pretty much everyone I knew about their advice on marriage and commitment. And I probably asked like 100 people and wrote it down in my journal and thought about it. And the only piece of wisdom that I still remember without looking back at my notes is from my Aunt Sue. She's separated and divorced in relationships, and she said the best, most useful thing that I heard. She said, "Keep working on yourself. Keep working on yourself." When Marcus and I wrote our wedding vows, it took us months to get them right. And Sue's wisdom influenced one in particular. We vowed to one another, "I promise to cultivate my own inner strength and resilience, not to rely on you to meet all of my needs, and to ask for help when I need it. Knowing we will each miss the mark, I covenant to bring understanding and forgiveness, to return and return and return again." The truth is, we aren't dogs. We have intellect and emotional intelligence and the capacity to reflect on our own behavior. We can choose to do more than bark. This is a blessing, and it is a challenge. A few months ago, I was talking with my mom and being sort of dismissive of her words. I think the conversation started because I was complaining about something and she was trying to offer advice, and I started to tune it out. And then I snapped at her for giving me advice, and she responded, "Well, I think I know something about this. I have been married to your father for 35 years. I was a little stunned. It's unusual for my mom to be assertive in that way, and I had to check myself. She was right. I was wrong. I don't often give my parents enough credit for how much hard work has gone into their long relationship. How many times have they had to say to one another, "I was wrong, I messed up. Can you still love me anyway?" She reminded me that people who have been around for a long time have had a lot of experience with making mistakes and forgiveness. My colleague, Robin Bartlett, made this observation about a wedding anniversary. She said, "A wedding is a beautiful and exciting and carefree day in one's life, and a marriage is a tour de force of joy and suffering and banality and loss and beauty and boredom, an acknowledgement of imperfection and frailty, and just plain old perseverance. I almost think we should have one of those $30,000 catered extravaganzas with a $10,000 dress and all the opulence for the 30th wedding anniversary instead of on our wedding day. The wedding day, maybe you get some Ritz crackers and cheese, a cake, but the real celebration should be decades later when you know what you got yourself into and you're still in it anyway. The problem is, of course, we're too smart and practical to spend $30,000 on one day by the time we're middle-aged. Robin is right. It's this strange ritual, and I had one myself, and now I have a little bit more sense of what I got myself into. Robin says, we are all clumsy in our relationships, and we are not defined by our worst mistake. You are not your addiction, your affair, your divorce, your last fight, your failure to parent well in all moments. You are not your anger, your depression, your unbelief, your spitefulness, your greed. You are not defined by your errors, but by the name which has been given to all creation, and that is beloved. May we be a place to call one another beloved. May we offer a place for confession and forgiveness for ourselves and each other. May we begin again in love.
I hope you enjoyed experiencing a small selection of some of the course materials from Beloved Conversations virtual program, Meditations on Race and Ethnicity. If you're interested in learning more about this or any other course offered by Meadville Lombard Theological School, you can find more information on their website at www.bcvirtual.meadville.edu. Normally, at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow. These methods are posted in the newsletter and on the UUCC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all the financial support for our many ministries from amongst ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in this blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let us now sing the doxology.
From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue.
Please join in singing the closing hymn, Life Calls Us On, words by Kendall Gibbons and music by Jason Shelton.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known. With
Let us now recite the valediction. Extinguish the flame of this chalice, and we know that the light of truth and love and the warmth of this community go with us until we meet again. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen. The benediction was written by the Reverend Gary Kowalski. Gathered in our various faiths, we give thanks for the blessing of world community as we share our common dream, homes and schools where children thrive, neighborhoods that are safe and clean, a city rich in colors and cultures, an economy where no one is expendable, a beloved community where rich and poor alike have access to the opportunity for a dignified and productive life. Churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples where our deepest hope is to be of service to a hurting world. Enable us as we leave this place to carry forth this prayer into the coming week, turning our thoughts towards charity, our hearts towards justice, and our hands towards the work of peace. Shalom and amen.